Okay, welcome back to the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast. This is Bryan. As always, joined by Colin and Peter. It is Tuesday night, so we're talking PGA. Just wrapped up all of our majors for the year. We got the Olympics coming next week. We have a good tournament this week. We have the Travelers Championship. We don't have the Big Four for the first time in a while, but it is headlined by Bubba Watson and just generally a strong field. So I think it's going to be a good week as we gear up towards the Olympics and then throughout the rest of the year. Guys, JB Holmes. Let's just start there, Pete. JB Holmes. JB Holmes.
Man, I'm tilted. JB, just one guy, just let me down. And he even played awesome. Like his round Friday, like he just crushed your soul right off the bat with a triple bogey and a bogey. But then all the potential we were waiting for just came to fruition at the very end of the round where he just went on a birdie barrage. So I don't feel bad about the pick. Same spot. I do it over and over and over again. I thought he was an excellent play. Turned out not to be really low owned, but interesting PGA Championship. The big takeaway for me was need more exposure to Jason Day. Easy to say with the result. And obviously, there are a lot of narratives working against him. But in the Thunderdome, Colin, I don't know if you saw.
Injured, and so that'll drive their ownership down, but they still have enough there that, like, okay, will it depress ownership? Like, how much would it depress ownership where you would actually take them? And it sounds like Jason Day was like the right answer there.
For sure.
Yeah, he wasn't 100% going in, but like I don't pay too much attention to the meta game, like at a lot of levels, just because I'm so much more cash game focused. But yeah, one of my big questions was kind of going forward is the state of the metagame now that you want to take injured guys because people are too afraid of injuries. I think there's a strong case to be made that people are too afraid of injuries.
In tournaments, for sure.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, cash games, it doesn't matter what ownership is, like, or it matters a lot less, but tournaments.
Yeah, you can't, and you don't want to risk it. Just the downside's too high with the other injuries. But for tournaments, I think it makes a ton of sense. And Koepka, I mean, he said he could only play 9 practice holes, like on Wednesday or something like that, and then he goes out and just is right there at the top of the leaderboard, playing great. So it was a fun tournament to watch. A lot of the chalk did miss the cut, but yeah, Jason Day made it interesting at the end, and congrats to Jimmy Walker.
Yeah, one of the and we kind of alluded to this one too in our live show. Not just Jimmy Walker, but Robert Streb was up there, who are kind of poster children for, hey, I remember when they were really good at golf and at the top of it, racking up DFS points. It's probably just noise to see them both in the top 5, but it's kind of that concept of what weight do you give players that you used to see great or have the capacity for greatness, like maybe like outside of your long-term window, like what, beyond 75 weeks or something like that. I mean, I think I asked you, do you play that subjective angle? Like, I remember when they were great and stuff, but not anymore. This week kind of seems to showcase that. Does this week change your opinion in terms of like maybe that's an angle to look at, or is this just noise?
So maybe it changes a little bit. I think that in tournaments, especially like a tournament like the Millionaire Maker, any angle that you want to take to get someone who's low owned with upside is good. I mean, Jimmy Walker was 1.4% owned, and you see it enough. Like that when that happens, it's just worth it. Especially in a tournament where 40% of the prize pool goes to first. I mean, these are totally irrelevant questions for cash games and even like 3-man leagues, 5-man leagues. But if you're playing a tournament where it's just boom or bust completely, there's a reason or an angle that you like someone that no one else is talking about, I think it's fine. I definitely like the angle of like taking a guy who has shown serious upside and just kind of teetered off. And I think it's easy to say now about Walker, but his game, he just kind of lost the accuracy in the putter a little bit, but his game didn't totally fall off a cliff. He was playing a lot worse than he was, say, in 2014, where he was, kind of on top of the golf world, but it wasn't like he was missing every single cut. There's still glimpses of what he had. So sharp pick this weekend, and Streb is definitely that guy who was a great golfer and then really teetered off. I was rooting for him hard. Unfortunately, missed that birdie putt on 18 to lock up a Masters spot for next year. But we'll see if Streb can get back out there and be a good golfer again.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to this week. This week we have the Travelers Championship. It's played at the TPC River Highlands. Colin, I'll kick to you to do your usual course fit. What does this course look like?
Accuracy for sure, and that kind of checks out with the higher level stats too. It's a par 70. It's short. All else being equal, you would expect accuracy to be important here, and that checks out with the course fit stats. So load up on your driving accuracy and your GAR, guys.
Okay, cool. And so this is sort of interesting because it definitely is an accuracy course. It's a short course, and definitely I agree with you, Colin, that it definitely looks like accuracy. But Bubba is the previous winner here. He's the defending champ, and he has just elite course history. And this is one of my questions that I want to talk about, and we've discussed many times before is, how much course history matters, and I think we all agree, it matters a little bit to a certain degree. It probably matters when it's elite course history, maybe Jordan Spieth at Augusta. So Colin and Pete, my question for you is Bubba qualify, as elite course history here with all of his wins in top 5 finishes?
That's kind of, we've kind of never solidified on a definition of what is a threshold for elite course history. I could see that, with, 4 top 5 finishes in the last 6 years, I think that I wouldn't fault anyone for saying that's elite, and that's definitely far up there. So, but again, that's kind of a subjective angle. I think it's definitely one of the best top 5 course histories in the field relative to how he's doing. That's not debatable. But Brian, I think your other question is, it's an accuracy course. We know Bubba is a bomber. Why are the two in conflict? I don't have a problem with course fit and course history being in conflict. And that was kind of the big write-up as part of course history because, yes, some of that is maybe course fit that traditional stats don't capture. That's definitely could be a part of it. But the whole point of course history is you're okay with not knowing why they do so well here. Maybe it's familiarity, maybe it's comfort level, maybe it's confidence. I don't really need to know why, but as long as you can kind of quantify it, then just, proceed accordingly. So yeah, I agree that it is a little bit weird that he has such great course history here when he's not an accuracy guy, but you can still measure it and you can still kind of plug it in going forward.
Yeah, Pete, do you have any thoughts on Bubba and his course history at all?
He's won two events in the last 6 years, 4 top 5. Clearly the best player in this field by a good margin to me. I like Grace a lot, but if you're talking world-class golfers, I think he's the guy. Koepka and Reed are also obviously great talent, and Kuchar's as consistent as they come. CJ is great too, but then after that, it gets pretty marginal pretty quickly. I definitely think Bubba Watson is a tier above everyone else in this field. So I think he's a great play. He's made 14 cuts this year, and he's appropriately priced as the top golfer at 12-3. So it's definitely a decision on how to utilize him. If you like a lot of cheap golfers, I definitely think it's a good play. But yeah, there's other options too. And if you want to just take the strict, driving accuracy, green regulation angle, you can start with Kuchar or something like that too in your cash game. So a lot of good options, and I definitely think he's intriguing and worth the price because his course history is so great, and he's the class of the field.
Gotcha. Another question that I had for you guys is just about this, and something we've been talking about the last several podcasts. We have a just unique schedule this year, coming off 2 majors in 3 weeks. We have the Olympics next week, and this sort of gets into the Brooks Koepka thing. And we also had an interesting scheduling quirk in that we played a lot of holes on Sunday because of the weather delay at the PGA Championship. And a guy like Brooks, I think, could potentially be majorly affected by this because he was already dealing with this bum ankle. He looked better, but playing that many holes on Sunday when we already thought he was injured, and then coming back into this week, I don't know if that worries you at all, Pete, or it just in general the thoughts of just the very cramped schedule and all of the drama and emotion of these 2 majors, then the Olympics next week with this just sort of slotted in. Does this affect anyone in your mind, or is it just something you're not worried about at all?
I feel like it affects Brooks. The ankle injury was definitely tough. The one thing, and part of the reason he's playing is he's fighting hard to get on the Ryder Cup team, which he did talk about how much it matters to him. So, in that regard, maybe you're not as concerned about withdrawal. He did play great, so clearly, he's capable of playing well. But at that price, he's a tournament play only for me, especially with some of the options around him.
So how much of that is just the ankle injury in general for you, Pete, versus ankle injury and, more than 18 holes on Sunday?
I think it's a slight combination of both, but more just the injury. I mean, I've seen it a lot, like being fearful of the injured guy if you're the opposing team, because I've seen it so many times. The injured guy just plays incredibly well, doesn't look himself, but plays well. Harder to see that in golf. Like Koepka, when he's swinging, hitting the ball a mile, looks great, looks healthy, but ankle's clearly bothering him. So just knowing he's not 100% is too much of a concern for me. And with this particular spot, there's so many guys around him that I really like that he's only a tournament play. Like Kuchar and who would you rather play just straight up in cash, Kuchar or Koepka?
Yeah, I stopped listening after Kuchar. Like Kuchar or no, the answer's Kuchar. But that's
right. Kuchar's 600 cheaper. Like you can play Grace for 300 more, or you can pay $1K more to get up to Bill Watson. So it's just he's at a price point where I'm just not considering him.
Okay, so those are all good reasons. I was kind of more idly speculating about how much additional wear and tear, even on injury, can a couple extra holes to golf give you? Injuries, we're kind of none of us have really quantified it and kind of put numbers to it, but just my idle thoughts are, come on, this isn't an NBA back-to-back. It's golf. How much actual strain could 5 additional holes or whatever put on an injury? If you're worried about the injury to begin with, that should be your base concern, and the 5 extra holes probably shouldn't change your opinion too much. So, that's just idle speculation on my part.
Yeah, and the only narrative here too is just that he's fighting for the Ryder Cup spot, and that's part of the reason he's out there. He's got a swollen, beat up ankle, but he's fighting to be on the Ryder Cup. So
yeah, that's an interesting angle.
Okay. Before we get into our player analysis, and we'll go by tiers as usual, Colin, you're in your cash game article series. Do you have anything to tease or plug for us?
No, it's going to be it's bar charts and coefficients, and as close as I can get to here's what matters in what order. There's a lot to unpack here, and it's definitely something that I will definitely be looking into going forward more. But it comes out tomorrow or today, I guess, when you're reading this or viewing this
or listening to it.
Yeah, all of your 5 senses. Yeah, all right. Okay. Please rescue me from myself.
All right. Okay, let's get into our player analysis, guys. And we're going to get back to our 3 tiers just because I think that this tournament is not sort of warrant the 4 or 5 tiers that we get into in majors. So we'll get back to our usual ranges. The first one is going to be the value range, which is going to be guys below 7K. And then we'll do our middle range, which is 7K to 8-9, and then all of the guys 9,000 on DraftKings and up will be our top tier. But let's start with the low tier, and then we'll work up to these high-priced guys that everyone definitely are interested in. So 6-9 and lower. Pete, you want to go first?
Sure. Get to steal all Colin's guys here. This is great.
I still got some sleepers left. Do your work.
All right. I'll try to steal the guys I think that you're going to say. Number 1, I think you're going to be on Chez Reavie. We talked a little bit about him pre-pod. Great spot here, coming off a good performance, and finally back in that dirt cheap price range that we like. Very accurate golfer. I think it's a nice spot to take advantage of Chez Reavie being 6,200. So I think he's a pretty nice chalk play. One guy who's popping for me in my model, which I'm not sure is going to be in yours, could be though, is Chad Campbell at 6,200. He's rating really high for me. I like Jerry Kelly as well for a cash game, 6K. I think he's totally fine. That's kind of a punt play. Accuracy and putting, Aaron Baddeley is actually rating a little bit high for me. I normally don't roster him ever, so I'm curious your opinion on him. Same with a guy like Russell Henley. Baddeley and Henley both are similar in that they're elite putters. But they kind of struggle with some other aspects of the game, especially, for Baddeley is just not as long, but that doesn't matter as much here. So I think those are 2 other cheap plays. One guy I've never even heard of is ranked pretty high in my model is Dong Hwan Lee
DH Lee, yep.
Yeah, he's 5K, so he's somewhat up there. And then someone asked me on Twitter as well about Henrik Norlander at 5,200, and he's rating high in my model as well. So, Colin, decipher all those guys. Tell me who you like, because I'm only confident on like Cheds, really, out of those guys.
Oh man, I was so hoping that you'd leave Campbell for myself.
I like Campbell too.
Right there, Chet, You know how much I love to see Ches below 7,000. That's the sweet spot. And normally he'd just be an auto fire, except Chad Campbell actually basically has him slightly dominated in every single other category. Course history is a little bit better, has a little bit more upside and a little more volume, so he's a little bit more of a known quantity. So I could see myself rostering both on a team, but like if I had to choose between one of the two, I think Campbell just kind of beats out, like, just by the skin of his teeth on all the other metrics.
What about the Colin Davey Love metric?
That's not in player models. I'm trying to keep it to things that we have here. But as far as the direct,
we know if you're weighing that filter high, Chez is in your lineup.
Yeah, that's just like Can I roster somebody 6 times? Is that possible? Who else is here in the bargain bin? Hudson Swafford, who's like starting to get a little bit more respectably priced. He's still rating pretty high for me. Not exactly the greatest of course fit, but that's just because I think like he's like high overall. I agree with Henley 100%. Other guys that are like the other ones that are kind of a little bit cheaper. Spencer Levine is like he's popped a couple times in our bargain bin before. I like him just as much. On Norlander, because you're right. We did get a specific request for that. I don't know. He is my favorite. There's nobody below that price that I like more. There are kind of a couple other comparables in that range, like Matt Jones and Vijay Singh, who are just a little bit more expensive, but still comparable. But what I've seen with Norlander, so Norlander's a little bit of an unknown to me because his volume isn't that high. But every time in his limited volume, his floor is pretty high. So if you are going to pick him, I think he makes a good cash game pick, but maybe not so much of a tournament because the upside isn't quite as much there. So, but yeah, it's pretty much Ches and Campbell are dominating this value tier by a pretty wide margin.
Colin, what are your thoughts on Thomas Aiken, a Euro guy? Good accuracy guy, popping high in some models that I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean I don't like that's not bad. Like that's of all the good course fit guys that are out there, kind of similarly. Like I have someone like David Toms, maybe like a little bit higher, and has a little bit better course history to boot. But if you want to go, like if you want to fade the age angle and just say like, all right, like David Tom doesn't have the upside or whatever, like yeah, I could see Aiken swapping in just fine.
Fair enough. Pete, Ches or Campbell?
I'm going to roster both, man. I'm just happy because he's third in my model overall. So I didn't know that. Yeah, I just made a little model. It actually has a plus minus of 4.23. I'll keep tinkering with it, see what I can come up with. But Campbell's he's rating high. He's way up there. He's higher than Reavy. So I guess in that regard, go with the numbers. But I'll probably roster both. I mean that unlocks a lot of great golfers.
Yeah, I mean, how much it pains me to say Campbell over Reavy, but, I agree with that assessment.
This is such a hedge, Colin. Can't believe you're doing this.
Neither can I. Like, I am bound to the numbers. Like, this is, like, yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyone else in this lower bargain bin, or you guys want to move on?
No, I think that's a pretty good coverage.
Cool. All right. Well, Colin, I'll let you take this one. The middle tier is going to be, again, 7K to 8.9.
All right. Top middle guys for me. Brendan Steele continues to be up there despite his poor showing at the British Open. It wasn't that bad enough it wasn't like maybe a DJ-esque performance where it drastically lowers his recent form. I mean, yeah, I missed the cut, but not by a whole much. Steele's just always going to be high for me in whatever tier he is going forward. I think that's just kind of a given. I think there's still some merit to that, but like that's kind of unsurprising. Francesco Molinari also has a really great course fit here, especially he's a little bit on the expensive side, but I think he's like next best in this tier. And then rounded out, Ryan Moore actually, I think, has the sneakily best course history relative to expectations in all of the field. Let's pull up his specifics here. Like, what exactly is his showing in the last 5 or so? Yeah, you stretch it back to 2009 a little bit, but like there's only 1 year he hasn't finished in the top 15. So I know Bubba's going to get a lot of attention for like best course history in the field, but I think Ryan Moore's is slightly better when it's relative to how they are. So I'm curious what his ownership is going to be. And then the guy I'm going to continue to ride that I'm pretty happy getting on ground floor is Tyrrell Hatton, who doesn't have course history here, but and we're talking about him a little bit pre-pod. I just think he's the new, if I'm going off of lazy European stereotypes, he's the new Danny Willett, and that he's the British guy that no one's heard of, but everybody will soon. So, Pete, curious on your opinion for those 4 guys, but those are kind of leading the class for me by a large margin.
You hit on everyone I wanted to talk on, with the exception of 2 guys who I'll save that are more just talking points. But let's start with Haddon. I love him. I watched him a bunch this weekend, and he just looks really good. Like, by test, he passed with flying colors. So I'm on Haddon. I think he's a great play. Molinari ranks really well. I guess one other guy I can bring up is Russell Knox, who I almost always am considering. Not the best price, and he's kind of just he hasn't maybe looked stupid. He hasn't maybe looked great. I mean, he's just kind of grinding it out. I mean, he has made 6 straight cuts. I mean, he's gone 10th. Then the Open is 30th, and PGA is 22nd. So he's definitely, in my opinion, world class like accuracy ball striker guy. But the price is not fantastic. It's not bad. Yeah, you hit all the guys that I'm going to have in that range. I mean, I think the other players that are going to be intriguing is Streelman, 1 in 14, so I think people will have him. He's not rating too high on my model, and not that high on him in general. Too many missed cuts. Has missed the last 2 cuts too, the Canadian Open and the PGA Championship, so I'm probably off him. And then another guy who just is tilting me to no end, who's somehow not doing as bad as he once was, is Keegan Bradley at 7,600. But personally, I think he'll struggle here because he normally does better with distance than anything. But actually played pretty well at the PGA Championship. 75% driving accuracy, 75% green regulation is pretty strong.
So you're going to roster him, Pete?
No. I'm just so scared. Every time he starts to do well, I get trolled. So we'll see. Hopefully it's not this weekend. Hopefully he stays quiet.
Fair enough. Colin, let's talk about Brendan Steele. I can't let you just have a 10-second little talking point and not talk about him a little bit more. So I'm curious, like when a guy misses a cut and it's a guy that you're on and a guy that you potentially want to use the next week, do you look at the data of like why he missed the cut? Like, for example, Steele missed the cut last week at the PGA Championship. He shot a 71 on Thursday and a 73 on Friday. And then if you look why he missed the cut, he actually hit his greens. He was fine with his distance, but what really killed him was his accuracy off the tee. Just his driving accuracy was awful, and he just didn't putt well. And that this is an accuracy course, so when a guy misses a cut and you potentially want to rebound on him, are you actually going to look at like exactly why he missed the cut and to see if it matches up with the course that he's about to play on?
No, I don't, and that's not saying that it's not a bad idea, though. The big one, I think the poster child for that this week is Rory, right, where he's like everything but putting. He was doing flyingly well and like just couldn't make a putt to save his life. That's a kind of case where it's like, all right, that's just, you're on the wrong side of variance. You did all the fundamentals right. In the case of Steele, why he missed the cut, I don't look into it too much beyond how much did you miss the cut by. Usually that takes care of, if there's something like truly like broken about all parts of your game, you're going to miss the cut by a lot. But no, I don't look at why they missed the cut. It doesn't mean I shouldn't, but short answer is no. I think long-term adjusted round does most of the heavy lifting there.
Yeah, that's fair. And you're right. Adjusted round score definitely takes care of that. Because if you miss the cut by a lot, then obviously that's much worse, and you're more heavily penalized. Pete, but I'm curious if that's something that you do.
Oh, a little bit, but yeah, I'm kind of with Colin. One quick comment pertaining to Rory, which this is going to – I don't know how this is going to make you feel, Colin, because it's strokes gained stat. But Rory McIlroy, Thursday through Friday, was first in total driving of all the golfers in the whole tournament and 156th in strokes gained putting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any beef against, like, strokes gain as an illustration of, like, I don't think you need strokes gain to tell you, like, he was crap at putting this week. That's
yeah. But that is just amazing telling stat, because if you watched him, I mean, he was just out in the middle of the fairway, super far every time, and putting it close a lot, and then just missing every fucking putt. Sorry for the language, but it was beyond tilting.
No worries. So, Colin, I mean, like, how do you deal with that? I mean, obviously, his adjusted round score is not going to take into account that, like, he was just on the wrong side of variance. So, like, how do you interpret just crappy variance and, like, actually, like, legit struggles?
So I think there's kind of some, like, and I've been toying with some, like, advanced level, like, BABIP type stuff under the hood, where if you can quantify the luck aspect out of it by kind of piecing together, like, essentially, like, what part of his scorecard was, like, luck versus skill, that's you can almost, like, maybe deduct that out of long-term adjusted round. So it's almost like adjustment to long-term adjusted round, where, like, right now adjusted round is just, like, the quality of the field and the condition of the course, right? But if you wanted to say, like, okay, what part of that was luck versus skill, you can get, like, next level into that, almost kind of like they do with BABIP in baseball, where if you can quantify luck, then maybe you, like, if someone missed the cut because they got unlucky, you can bump their long-term adjusted round. That's the short version. This is it's in its very early experimental stages, so it's still in the lab, so to speak. But I think that the way to do that going forward is trying to quantify luck.
Okay, fair enough. You also got to look at your talent over course fit, whether that matters. You got to get to that.
Oh yeah,
that study at some point. Okay, all right. Let's get to this top tier. And Pete, I'll kick back to you, but first I want you to answer a question before you get to this top tier. Molinari, I think, is a guy that we talked about pre-pod. You guys both mentioned that you love. I just want to nail this down because I do think that he's a very intriguing player. And I would almost venture to say that he might be the best value in the field relative to his price. And I definitely just want to make sure that we properly hype him. Would you agree with that, or just like to place him in context with the field per his salary?
He's a little more expensive than he normally is. My only knock on Molinari in general is he's, like, lower on, like, the birdie making scale. But on a par 70 like this, doesn't matter as much. And the one thing about his round 3, he just went on a birdie barrage at the PGA Championship. So, yeah, the one knock on him is he doesn't make nearly as many birdies, but the guy is just so consistent. And at a course like this, I think he's an elite play. Wish he was kind of in that, like, high 7s range, or, like, even cheaper where he is in, like, the majors. But 8,900, I think he's totally fine. And, yeah, I'll have a good amount of exposure to him. I mean, we got kind of our 3 guys that we all, both Colin and I like Molinari. I'm more of a Knox guy, and Colin, I guess, is more of a Steele guy, although I've rostered Steele quite a bit. All 3 of those guys kind of in that range, I think, they're very viable plays.
Right on. Okay. I'll let you kick off this top tier then. So these are guys that are 9K and higher.
Right. So there's not as many guys, obviously, in this range, and there's really only a couple guys that I'm going to play consistently in this range. I think that you have to look at Bubba Watson. We talked about him at the start of the pod. I think he's a great option up top, especially for tournaments. Love his upside. Then Kuchar, to me, is like the lock of locks in cash games, especially if you want to take both Reeve and Campbell. You'll have the salary to get Kuchar and another guy in pretty easily. So I'm on him quite a bit. I think Zach Johnson's fine, but I prefer Kuchar. JB Holmes, curious to hear the take from Colin on him. He's way more expensive than we normally see him, and it's not, the setup for him being that he's a distance guy, but I'm sure Colin will still like him. I'm going to be tilted because I'll probably not have too much of JB Holmes, so he's going to win. Yeah, that's the gist of it. Jim Furyk, I don't mind the price. I think Jim Furyk's pretty healthy right now, so he's another accuracy guy if you want to take that angle. He's definitely trending in the right direction now from his wrist injury. I think he's back to the Jim Furyk we know. So, yeah, that's the range. Kuchar's the guy I'll have the most exposure to by far in this range.
So with Watson, I mean, normally I get like that. That's kind of that elite course history type of thing we're talking about earlier, and that's kind of like maybe what you can pull the trigger on the most. But I do think it's worth discussing because we talked about this a little bit before. This is the first slate, it seems, in forever that we haven't had one of the big four. And one of the things that, and the cash game thing article will allude to this tomorrow, is normally like when you pay up for a 12K guy, part of what usually goes into that is they'll have this explosive upside. Like Dustin Johnson is probably the classic example, where sometimes they'll just put up 120 points or something ridiculous, and it has a chance to cover for all your other losses in case you guys don't make the cut in a cash game. And with Bubba, he doesn't really fit that mold about he's not going to put up the video game numbers that could potentially cover for all your losses. He's a great cut maker. He's a sneaky good cut maker, as we've kind of talked about before. But he's not in the same mold as just kind of the guys who can cover for your losses. Now, I can hedge against myself and say, like, well, it's elite course history, so who cares? Maybe he will put it up this time. But if you're talking in the general sense, he's different than the normal 12K guys. So first of all, does that make sense to you guys? And second, like, what parts do you, I guess, disagree with, or like the clarification or what have you?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. He's definitely not the same golfer that you're normally getting when you spend 12-3. He's been sneaky good at making cuts, which I think goes against, public perception of Bubba, but certainly doesn't have, the consistent massive upside that Dustin Johnson, Jason Day in particular have shown this year. And obviously Rory and Spieth have done it over their careers as well. So, you're not getting that same caliber of golfer, but he is the class of this field. We have seen some other tournaments where like Day is far and away the class of the field, and the difference between Day and the next guy is much greater than Bubba and like Grace in this circumstance. So I think the elite course history is what makes him still in play. It's also not like a perfect course setup for him, but the elite course history, I think, kind of overweights that. So I think he's a viable play. I like Kuchar overall better than him, the points per dollar. Yeah,
I agree with that 100%. My best points per dollar here in this range, actually, and again, I feel he's kind of getting to that category I seem to bring up all the time, is Gary Woodland. And Pete, I know you've been
even on an accuracy course.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great course fit. I 100% agree, but that's just kind of another case of the overall long-term adjusted round is just like it's not a 9,100 price.
So, Colin, is this like a more GIR driving accuracy course? I mean, I know they sometimes go hand in hand, but when we're talking accuracy, which is it?
I'd probably go driving accuracy a little bit more over GIR. Yeah, they do go hand in hand, but yeah, definitely driving accuracy. I agree that Woodlands doesn't have the greatest driving accuracy for this car. In fact, it's pretty much on the low side. But
he's rating terrible in my model. But
yeah, so that's
straight. If you're playing Woodland, you're strictly just going long-term adjusted round angles.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I'd agree with that. But again, it seems a little bit too cheap. And again, it's not terrible course history either. It's definitely on the plus side, which is more than you can say for Brandon Grace, Oosthuizen, or even JB Holmes. And before I forget, I have Holmes is probably the worst rated player in this tier for me.
Wow,
that pains me. I don't say that lightly, but
he hasn't been this expensive though.
If he were like back at his normal 7,500, I'd probably be a lot more likely to pick him. But with his not great course history, his terrible course fit, it's just way too expensive. What is his course? Yeah, his course history here, right? Yeah, he's only played this 3 times, and it's a miscut of 59 and a 37. There's nothing it's consistent with course fit in general. It's just not the right spot for him, I don't think.
Right. Paul Casey does have great course, or at least on the one, has done well here one time.
Right. So that kind of gets back to the age-old, what do you do with someone who has a single second-place finish? is that better than someone like Watson who has like 5 top 10?
Yeah.
Who's won it, but like I definitely prefer a little bit higher sample size than 1 before I say like pull the trigger on course history as like a.
He played well at the Open Championship though, so I do think Casey Summerall will have in tournaments.
Okay.
Sorry, he played well at the PGA Championship.
Yeah.
Colin, man, I can't. I don't even recognize you. You take Campbell over Ches, and then you bash JB Holmes.
I bash JB Holmes at 9,700. I would definitely like every time I love him, he's always in the mid 7s. That's just that I can still be consistent like that.
That's more unfair in my opinion. Yeah, he's way above his normal price now.
Speaking of a guy who's a little above his normal price, and Pete, I apologize in advance because I realize that I know you're trying to be sneaky here and not mention this guy because you want all of them to yourself. Your boy Jon Rahm. He's
the problem is like the word's out on Rahm. Like out of all these guys, Rahm, like out of all the young prodigies, like people are really hyping him now. Obviously, we were saying the same thing about Bryson, but I think the Bryson thing.
Hey, who's this we? Who's this we? Like that's just you. Like, all right. Anyway.
No, not me. I was somewhat fast to Rahm, but not as fast as other guys, and like even like the Golf Channel guys. Like he's gained some serious steam, and look at his odds. Like that's what I'm saying. Like it's not the market is adjusted to Rahm being like a real thing, and maybe that's because people still like to invest in him, but I think that there's definitely something here. More so than someone like, I don't even know. I think I understand why people got so excited about Bryson DeChambeau, me being one of them. He's incredibly articulate, doing something totally unique, had the great finish to his amateur career. But Rahm, there's more data to back up him being really legit, and especially with the markets, how they're adjusting to him. I think he's someone to pay attention to. He's made every cut that he's played. Listen to PGA Tour. I know it's only 5 events, but 10th, 23rd, 3rd, 59th, and 2nd.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I like if I had to like ignore the rookie factor, I think Jon Rahm's results have just been way better out of the gate than Bryson DeChambeau's.
Oh, it's not even close.
It is justifying the hype way more. Right now, I have, in kind of my internal rankings, I have Jon Rahm 15th in the world if you just purely take results at face value, even after applying like your rookie discount. I think sometimes the rookie discount like needs to like you can adjust for it, but it's still kind of a very unknown type of thing. So I probably won't like actually play him for kind of reasons I outline in my rookie article. Mostly because I've seen people like Austin Cook occupy the same spot where if your first 4 tournaments you made the cut, you're just going to be really high. But that just could be because you come out hot out of the gate. So I'll expect to regress a little bit, but for what it's worth, I think Rahm is justifying rookie hype way more than anybody else we've seen.
And just look at one thing, too, you can look at here. The guy's making a ton of birdies as well, and eagles. If you look at the average points per game of these guys, he's number 1 in the field by 9 points. Next 3 guys on the list are Grace, Watson, and Kuchar. I mean, everything so far, it's just, again, short sample. He can miss this cut, and it's just, it's another rookie thing, but way more substance to back up, even though it's still a small sample, Rahm, than any of these other rookies that we've been obsessed with for 2 years. And yes, I'm always going to be buying the rookie like a donkey. I just, Colin even tells me the data is one way. I'm too stubborn. I want to ride the young guns.
Can lead a horse to water, can't make him drink it.
In general, I don't play him, but like Rahm's now the guy that I'm going to have exposure to.
Okay.
So Pete, just for fun, how would you rank these young guys? You have Rahm. If you want to put DeChambeau, you want to put Ollie Fitzpatrick, Justin Thomas. I don't know who you want to include in there, but these
the top 2 young guys for me are Rahm and Grillo. Grillo's 23, and if
I like that.
If you're gonna just call it young guns, like Spieth's far and away number 1. I mean, Spieth's just 23 as well. So like. That's another thing. Like Spieth was like Colin to go against your other point and grained into his rookie season, but like Spieth is very young. Like there's something there too. So I don't know. I mean, I think that Rahm's clearly the best out of like the quote unquote rookies. It's not close. And if you look at his draft, the way he's done in DraftKings so far, it's just been so good. But we'll see if that continues. It's only been 5 events. It's a small sample, and when you're listening to what I say pertaining to this stuff, just know it's biased. When you're listening to Colin, it's data-driven, so you should probably lean that way.
Okay, fair enough. Any Zach Johnson love this week?
The argument for Johnson in a cash game is just like he has that cut maker aspect to him. I think the only two that are better in that regard are Kuchar and Watson, which isn't too much of a surprise. But I still prefer, like, I'd probably pay the extra to get Kuchar over Johnson, for example. The only other thing that gives me a little bit knock on Johnson and maybe discount a little bit is, all else being equal, his course history isn't great here. Let's pull it up to see exactly what it is. Yeah, it's in the last 5 years, it's 2 underwhelming finishes, a miscut, and a top 10. So that's on par, I'd say bad, for someone of Johnson's overall ability.
Yeah, I think he's fine. I think there's better guys in that range. I probably would take Rahm over Zach Johnson in a tournament. Cash games, definitely ZJ probably. One last stat for Rahm in this tournament. Only 2 guys have made every cut this year that are playing this tournament, Rahm and Bubba Watson.
So why did
over 20? The other's done it over like 3 or something.
5 for 5.
5. Okay, sorry, we're almost on 2 hands. My mistake.
5 for 5. And Bubba's 14 for 14. So take that for what it's worth. There's your little fun stat of the day. No, I looked through to make sure. There's one guy, Robbie Shelton, who's 1 of 2, and I looked through. No one else is like 1 of 1 or anything like that. So I get to brag about Rahm with the 5 of 5.
That is technically correct. Yes, he has not missed a cut.
Don't argue with the data, man.
I can't argue with the data. That's exactly correct.
I like how Pete didn't mention Rahm when it was his turn, and then I just mentioned him, and he had like 700 stats ready to go.
I think he's good. No, he's controlling himself with the rookies. He just knows that just like it's gonna.
I didn't even mention Bryson, and I'll have him on 1 tournament team. I'll be on 1.
Yeah, Bryson was his 7K.
It's going to be with Rahm. It's going to be like the lineup's going to be all the young guns. I'll throw like Kepka there, just all the variants. Just going to throw all the volatility team out.
Tyrell Hatton's pretty young. He's like 23, 24.
Yeah, I really like him. I watched him hit this one shot. He had like an iron. He stuck it like a foot away. And the announcer was like, "This kid's good." I was like, "Colin, nice call." Pretty sweet.
Thank you for watching, so I don't have to. The usual.
Yep.
Oh, gosh. All right. Let's pick winners. Who wants to go first?
All right. So our cutoff here is 9K, right?
Yeah, let's take Molinari out of it, too, because he'd be too easy.
All right. Can I go first this time?
Yes.
You go first.
I'll go last. I'm last.
All right. I want Hatton. Give me Hatton.
All right, that's fine. That's a good power move. Yep. I thought I maybe earned that because like last time, no, like that's fine. All right, I'll go. I'll stick to my sneaky good course history angle and say Ryan Moore.
That's a good call.
I like that call. Ryan Moore, that's someone I'm going to have a lot of exposure to in tournaments. I guess you guys left him for me. I'll take my boy Russell Knox. Just keep pounding that.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to take Russell Knox here. Favorite guy to 9K in it.
Some things change. Some things always stay the same. All right. Colin, Pete, thanks, guys. Everyone, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week for the Olympics, right? That's next week?
Yeah, Olympics are next week.
Yeah, we have John Deere and the Olympics. So we'll have a lot of good golf next week. So talk to you guys then.